Mark Carney campaigned on elbows up Canada like he was posturing himself as some sort of superpower against U.S. tariffs, but just days before Canadians voted, he quietly scrapped nearly all countermeasures. So it's elbows down, tail tucked between the legs, and spine missing in action. Let's dig in. Central banker turned Prime Minister Mark Carney promised strong leadership and quite literally campaigned during the recent Canadian snap election on a tough stance against U.S. tariffs. But behind closed doors, he's quietly dropped most of those counter-tariffs. And let's be honest, they were pretty foolish in the first place.
President Trump thinks Canada will cave in. We will never, ever bow down to a bully. Canadians will always stick together. And we won't stand by as tariffs hurt our workers and their families. Canadians need to remain united. Now, let me be clear. This situation, unfortunately, could not be more serious. And at times like these, we need serious leadership and a serious plan. I'm ready to stand up for Canada. Who's with me?
Remember that? Carney said that Canada would never back down. Well, fast forward to now, and those counter-tariffs he sloganized with elbows up rhetoric, well, they're near zero. According to Oxford Economics, and as reported by the National Post, the exemptions quietly implemented by Carney halfway through the election writ mean Canada's tariff increase on the U.S. is practically non-existent. The 6-month tariff exemption applied specifically to products used in Canadian manufacturing, processing, food and beverage packaging, as well as items related to healthcare, public safety, national security, and automakers like General Motors. With the exemptions making counter-tariffs drop to nearly zero, so much for standing up. So why this change? Well, it turns out that Canadian businesses weren't happy. The Canada Gazette reveals that manufacturing, public health, healthcare, and national security stakeholders were hit hard. Canadian countermeasures were necessary. However, some stakeholders noted concerns with challenges in adjusting their supply chains to Canada's surtaxes, notably in the manufacturing, public health, healthcare, public safety, and national security sectors. But here's the irony. They called Premier of Alberta Danielle Smith a traitor for not imposing counter-tariffs earlier, and here they are doing the same thing. Once again, it's the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy. So while Carney campaigned on using the tariff revenue to support workers, that was obviously a lie. The Canada Gazette came out on May 7th, but the elbows up counter tariffs were quietly dropped on April 16th. That's nearly 2 full weeks before Canadians hit the polls on April 28th. It was a bait and switch. Carney promised billions in counter tariffs, but now, well, nothing. And don't expect a budget this year to help clarify things. Remember when Carney doubled down and repeatedly said that Canada's relationship with the U.S. was effectively over?
The biggest challenge as a country is becoming the most urgent. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over.
Carney folded. It's no surprise that Trump praises him. Carney campaigned demonizing Trump as a dire threat, projecting himself as some supreme defender of Canada, only to cozy up to him in the Oval Office post-election. Trump even called Carney a talented guy, which is a stark contrast to the tough counter-tariff stance Carney abandoned, revealing his weakness and failure to stand firm for Canadian interests.
His party was losing by a lot. And he ended up winning, so I really want to congratulate him. It was probably one of the greatest comebacks in the history of politics, maybe even greater than mine. But I want to just congratulate you. That was a great election, actually. We were watching it with interest, and I think Canada chose a very talented person, a very good person, because we spoke before the election quite a few times.
So this isn't all about tariffs, it's about trust. Right off the hop, Carney's being caught misleading and lying to Canadians, both at home and abroad, with his tough talk and inability to walk the walk. Even the Globe and Mail is issuing scathing criticisms of Carney, calling his cabinet a tired concoction of quota-driven appointments, redundant roles, and pork barrel politics, devoid of fresh vision and doing the same old liberal song and dance of prioritizing self-serving interests. Carney campaigned on elbows up slogans as though he had leverage and grit, but he folded into quiet submission without a fight. What Canadians have now isn't bold leadership, but a calculated performance aimed at preserving political optics. So let's call it what it is, not elbows up by any stretch of the means, but elbows down, tail tucked, and spine missing. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Mark Carney has quietly helped shape some of Canada's most damaging policies, while cashing in through offshore deals, ties to China, and even connections to Ghislaine Maxwell. Canadians deserve the truth. To learn more and support our work exposing this, please go to thecarneyfiles.com. That's thecarneyfiles.com.